This is lesson 3.7 out of the Introduction to Algebra book. In my class, notes for 3.7 start on page 80. Lesson 3.7 is titled Formulas and Equation Solving. Formulas and equation solving. All right, and here are your warm-ups. All right, problem number 1 says, find the area of a rectangle when L equals 12 and W equals 5. Right? Find the area of a rectangle when L equals 12 and W equals 5. All right, so the second one. Find the area of a triangle when B equals 6 and H equals 7. And number 3. Sue drove 3 hours at 52 miles per hour. Can I abbreviate it there? Okay. How far did she drive? How far did she drive? All right. Now, if you don't remember the formulas that you need to answer all of these questions, remember that they should be, if you're in my class anyway, in the back of your book already. Find the correct formula, write down the formula, plug in the known values, and solve. All right, so our I can statement for lesson 3.7 is I can solve formulas for a variety of situations. All right, so this is very similar to what you've done before. You've already worked with all of the formulas that we will be using in this lesson. But before, they gave you the values that you would need, kind of like what you saw up here in the warm-up, and then you just had to simplify the expressions. But now you have to solve for a missing value, and it will change. Okay? But it's just like what you do when you solve a regular equation. It's just that these are formulas instead of just kind of blank vanilla equation. A little bit more of a connection to real life in this one. All right, so for your cutouts, there's 3 slides, but I want you to cut them down to what I'm showing here so that all 3 of them will fit one right after another in this order here on the notes. See, like that. You might need to pause at this point and cut out your pieces. Okay, so I'm going to get mine glued down onto here. You could always just fast forward through this spot while I'm doing it. Get my glue on here. page. So we're putting the formulas that you'll be needing for this lesson into the notes here. But remember, they are also already in your book. All right. So there we go with our notes. Let's get them into frame here. And with my yellow highlighter, we'll start with working with equations for to solve for a missing value. We have very specific steps that we require you to work out when you do these, require you to show. And it's, you've heard all of us teachers say this before, it can seem like a bit much, but we're training you for when these get much more complicated later down the road, and they will be. So we will insist on these steps being shown in your work exactly as I'm about to teach you. All right, so there are 5 steps for each one of these formula problems. The first one, in our notes it says, find the formula that fits the situation given. So in other words, the first step is to write the formula. Number 2, substitute all known values for the variables into the formula. In other words, plug in known values. Number 3, determine if any numbers can be multiplied that are on the same side of the equal sign. If so, multiply those numbers. So that's kind of like simplifying on each side of the equal sign. And you'll see what that looks like shortly. And then number 4 is solve the equation using inverse operations. So that's figuring out what operation is in the equation and use the inverse operation to solve for the variable they're asking for. That's what you did on your lesson 3.6 just prior to this one. And the 5th and final step is write out the answer in a complete sentence. Always, every single time. So those are the 5 steps for solving these equations. And I'm going to show you the first one right over in here. But first, let's go ahead and highlight, what do we have over here? Well, here are the formulas that we'll be using in this lesson. The formula for the area of a triangle, the formula for the area of a rectangle, the formula for volume. These 3 you guys should know by heart by now. These 3 we'll use all the time, and you should just know them. But we're going to give you a little help here and put them in here anyway. This is the formula for finding simple interest. This is the formula for finding distance, D equals R times T. And this is the formula for finding a batting average. All right? Those are the ones we'll be using in this lesson. Okay, so the first example we'll do in our notes is, let's write out the problem here. Okay, I'll bring it down a little more. There we go. Okay, the area of a rectangle is 36 units squared. All right? The length is 4 units. What is the width? What is the width? All right? All right, so step 1 tells me I have to determine what is the proper equation and get that written down. So let's see. It's talking about the area of a rectangle, and I know the formula for the area of the rectangle is A equals length times width. And I'm just kind of spreading it out here so that I can plug in the values underneath each one of those variables and have room to do that, keeping things lined up nice. All right, so step 2 says to do exactly that. Okay, plug in any known values. All right, so what do I know? I know that the area of the rectangle is 36 units square. So 36 goes under the A for area. I know that the length is 4 units. So 4 goes under L for length. And then I don't know what the width is. That's what I have to find out. So I'm just going to carry that part of the equation down. All right. Now, step 3 says to determine if any numbers can be multiplied. All right. And that's where we kind of do our neatening up or simplifying expressions. So there's nothing I can do with 36 on this side. It just is 36. But now I can get rid of this multiplication symbol and just show it as 4W. All right, that's my step 3. Step 4 is to do the math. Step 4 is to apply inverse operations and do the math. So I know how to do these. I've been doing these for several lessons now. First, I build my fence, and my goal is to get W all by itself. W likes to be alone. All variables do. 4W means 4 times W, 4 multiplied by W. So the inverse of multiplication is division. So to get rid of that 4, I need to divide it by 4. That gets rid of it, and now W is all by itself. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I have to divide on the other side the 36 by 4 as well. And 4 goes into 36 9 times. Okay, there's my answer. But my final step, step 5, says to write a sentence that answers the question. So the question was, what is the width? All right, the width of the rectangle is 9. And what kind of measurement units were we using in the question? It was all just units. So the width of the rectangle is 9 units. And that is my answer, this sentence right here. So I will circle it in red. All right, so that's the 5 steps, and that is exactly how it needs to be shown in your work. Each step individually, keeping the equal signs nice and lined up so we know what's happening on each side of the equation at all times. All right? Okay, so we'll go on to a second page so that I can show you 2 other examples using these equations. All right, so that was page 80, so this will be page 81. And our first example on this page is going to be Micah biked 42 miles. Wow, it's a long bike ride. Micah biked 42 miles at a speed of 14 miles per hour. Miles per hour. So it looks like we know how far Micah biked and what his rate was. How many hours did he bike? So it looks like we're looking for time, huh? All right, so step 1. What formula do we need for this problem? Well, this is definitely requiring the distance formula. So distance formula is D equals rate times time. D equals RT. All right, so next step is to plug in known values. Number 2. Okay, plug in known values. Well, what do we know? We know the distance, 42 miles. So let's put that right under the D for distance. Keep our equal signs lined up. We know the rate, he biked at 14 miles per hour. So let's put that right under R for rate, times, we don't know the time. That's what they're asking us to figure out, right? So now we have all of our known values plugged in. Step 3, to do any simplifying on each side of the equation, if we can. So 42 is just 42 by itself and an equal sign. And 14t, we can get rid of that multiplication sign now and just write it as 14t, all right? Okay, step 3 is do the math. Use inverse operations to solve for t. So I'll draw my fence. I see t is over on this side and he really wants to be alone. We've got to isolate and get rid of that 14. 14t means multiplication. The inverse operation of multiplication is division. So we will divide by 14 to get rid of that 14. And now t is all by himself, just like he wants to be. But what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. And 14 goes into 42 3 times. All right? So we did the math. Oh, I just noticed I put a 3 in that green one. Oops. Colored pencils don't erase real well either, so. That was step 4, do the math. There we go. Okay, so our 5th and final step is to write our answer sentence. So our answer sentence, what was it asking us? How many hours did he bike? Micah biked for 3, t equals 3 hours. He went 42 miles in 3 hours? That's a long bike ride. Wow. All right. Micah biked for 3 hours. That's our answer, so I will circle that in red. Okay? All right. One last example. Where's my black pencil? Here we go. Okay. The volume of a box is 120 inches cubed. Volume is cubed, right? Here we go. The height is 6 inches. The length is 5 inches. All right, so we are going to find the width. Find the width of the box. All right, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so step 1, write the formula. This question is talking about the volume of the box. So I need the formula for volume. And the formula for volume is V equals length times width times height. Keep my equal signs lined up here. That was step 1. Step 2 is plug in any known values. So what do they tell us? They tell us what the volume of the box is, 120 inches cubed. So I'll put the 120 right under the V for volume. They tell us what the height is, that's 6 inches. So I'll put 6 right under the H. They tell us what the length is, that's 5 inches. So I'll put the 6 right under the H for height. I have a feeling I said length. But 5 now goes under the L for length. They're asking us to find the width of the box, so we don't know that. So I'll just bring down the rest of the expression, and I've plugged in all my known values. Step 3. Step 3 is to do any multiplying on either side if we can. Step 3 is to simplify our expressions on each side. So we keep the 120 and the equal signs lined up. 5 times 6 is 30. And the W stays right there now with the 30. Okay? All right, so then step 4 is to do the math. Use our inverse operations to solve for W. W wants to be all alone on his side of the equation, and 30W means multiplication. So the inverse operation of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide this by 30. That gets rid of 30, and now we have our variable W all by itself. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. I have to divide 120 by 30. 3 goes into 12 4 times, so I've got 4 and keep one of those zeros. And then that way I know that, W equals 40. So, why do I have a feeling I made a weird mistake? No, it doesn't equal 40. It equals 4. Sorry, I don't keep one of those zeros. Yikes. All right, 30 goes into 120. That didn't even make sense. 4 times. There we go. All right. Okay, so W equals 4. That does make sense. If I have a length of 5 and a height of 6, a width of 4, that sounds right. All right. Okay, so then number 5, our last step here is to write our answer sentence. So what's it asking us? To find the width of the box. So our sentence should say, the width of the box is 4, and what were we dealing in? Inches. 4 inches. The width of the box is 4 inches. All right, so we'll circle that red. That's our answer. All right, so that's how we do the volume problem. Okay, so that's our notes. Let's take a look at practice problems for lesson 3.7. Okay, here's our practice problems for lesson 3.7. Very similar to the notes, same 3 types of problems. And so you shouldn't have any problems identifying what volume or what formula you need. All right, so here's problem number 1. Problem number 2. Actually, I think I'll just read this out loud. All right, problem number 1 says, the area of a rectangle is 45 units squared. The width is 9 units. Find the length. All right. And problem number 2. Jake traveled 175 miles in 5 hours. At what rate was he driving? And the final problem, problem number 3. The volume of a box is 378 inches cubed. The height is 14 inches. The length is 9 inches. Find the width of the box. All right, here's how we work out these problems. Remember our steps. All right, so step 1 is to write the formula. It says the area of a rectangle, so I know the formula I need right on this one is the area of a rectangle. So that is A equals length times width. All right. Step 2 is to plug in any known values. Well, it's telling me that the area is 45 units square. So I'm going to put 45 under A for area. Keep my equal signs lined up. It tells me what the width is. It's 9 units. Okay. It doesn't tell me what the length is. That's what I have to find. So I'll bring down that part of the equation then. All right. Now, next step is to do any simplifying on either side of the equation. So I've got 45. And now I'm going to get rid of this multiplication symbol and just call it 9L. All right. Next step is to solve my equation for L. L wants to be alone. So we've got to use inverse operations to help him out with that. 9L means multiply. So I know I need to divide. That's my inverse operation to multiplication by 9. That cancels those out, and now I have L all by itself. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other, so I'm going to divide by 9 over here as well. 45 divided by 9 is 5. All right, so the length of the box is 5 units. My last step, my fifth step, is to write my answer sentence. So over here, I will write the length of the box. Oh, I keep saying box. It's rectangle, huh? Oops. The length of the rectangle is 5 units. All right, that's my answer. The length of the rectangle is 5 units. And that's how we work those out. All right, now let's look at problem number 2. All right, problem number 2. Jake traveled 170 miles in 5 hours. At what rate was he driving? All right, so this is a distance problem. I write out my distance formula. D equals rate times time, RT. Okay, keep my equal signs lined up. Second step is to plug in known values. I know that the distance he traveled, 175 miles, so I'm going to write 175 under the D for distance. I know that he traveled for 5 hours, so that's my time. That goes under T. I don't know what the rate he was driving at. That's what I have to figure out. So I'll just bring down the R. Right. Now I simplify on either side of the equation. I just bring down my 175 equals, and then multiply these. When I do that, I get 5R. All right. Now I need to solve for R, so I'll build my fence. And I know 5R means multiplying, so the inverse operation of multiplication is division. So I have to apply dividing to get rid of that 5 and get R all by itself. All right. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Okay. 5 goes into 175 35 times. Okay, so I have R equals 35. The rate was 35 miles per hour. So my final step is to write out my answer sentence, and it asks me at what rate was he driving. Jake was driving 35 miles per hour. Oops, miles per hour. Okay, that's the rate he was driving. All right, there's your answer. Okay, so that's problem number 3. Or 2, sorry. Let's go on to problem number 3. All right, so it says, the volume of a box is 378 inches cubed. The height is 14 inches. The length is 9 inches. Find the width of the box. So we're dealing with a volume problem here. The formula for volume is V equals length times width times height. Second step is to plug in any known values. Well, we know the volume of the box is 378. So I'm going to write that right down here under V for volume, 378. I know the height is 14 inches, so I'm going to write 14 under the H. I know the length is 9 inches, so I'm going to write 9 under the L for length. I have to find the width of the box, so I just bring down the W in my multiplication symbols. All right? So now I need to figure out what's 9 times 14. So you'll probably need to scratch that out on the side. But I know that 9 times 14 is 126. And we keep the variable W with it. Okay? And bring down the rest of the equation. All right? Now I can solve for W. So to solve for W, I build the fence. I look and see that my inverse operation for multiplication is division. And so to get my variable isolated, I have to divide by 1. So, I have to divide by 126, which gets me 1, and it gets rid of those. So now my variable is all by itself. But what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. That's 126 divided on this side also. And 126 divides into 378 3 times. So the width of the box is 3 inches. So final step is to write my answer statement over here. The width of the box is 3 inches. All right, so that's my answer. All right, that's how you do the volume one. Okay, so that's the practice problems. Let's take a look at your worksheet here. On your worksheet, they have 6 problems, and they give you all the formulas you need right at the top. All right, so for each one of these problems, you've got to find the missing value and state your answer in a complete sentence. For each one of these, you must show your work in these 5 steps, just like we did in the notes. All 5 of those steps. Write the formula, plug in known values, solve, and make sure you have an answer statement. If you don't think you can do all of that in the space provided for each one of these problems, then use an extra sheet of paper, attach it to the, staple it to the back of this worksheet, and just write your answer sentence on the front. All right? And that's probably the best way to go to keep your work nice and organized. So you need to decide which one of these formulas is appropriate for each one of these problems. And they're all problem types that we have done before. All right, so just follow the 5 steps from our notes and you'll be all right. All right, so that leaves us with our exit ticket. This is the exit ticket for lesson 3.7. As always, I don't show you how to do these or give you the answers. You may use this for extra practice, or your teacher might use them for testing, quizzing, assessment purposes. All right? Okay, so that's lesson 3.7 out of our Introduction to Algebra book. Remember, the only way to learn math is to do math, and mistakes are proof that you're learning.